Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to do something a little different. We are going to run down the top 10 comic books that are the most favorited books on the Shortboxed app since the app was launched. This is pretty cool in my mind, and it is cool because if someone is taking the time to favorite a comic, that is a good sign and an indication that this is a book that they want to pick up, one that they want to purchase and add to their collection. It is a sign that these are the in-demand comics. But here's the thing. As I run down this list of those books that are the most favorited, and there are 10 of them, I want you to listen to the other things that I am highlighting. Listen to the total number of books that have been graded, the number that are blue labels, and more importantly, the number of books that are coming back at a 9.8. What does this say about these comics? What does it say about their long-term value? I am very interested in hearing what your thoughts are down in the comment section, so don't be shy about leaving that behind, because I personally think that the census counts, the percents of books that are coming back as a 9.8 says a lot about the long-term potential and value of these comics. Now, if some people have said that I sound like an investor and a seller, I personally do not think that that's a bad thing, to be honest with you. But by looking at this data, I personally think it also makes me a better purchaser of comics. It's a better way to spend my hard-earned money when I take the time to think about the data and consider how much I actually want to spend for a comic. So I don't want to bias you guys anymore because, again, I'm interested in hearing what your thoughts are. So again, leave that down in the comment section. Number 10, Amazing Spider-Man issue number 129. This book is the first appearance of the Punisher and also the Jackal, created by the legend Jerry Conway. At present, there are a total of 16,769 total copies of this comic on the census, which includes 14,730 copies which are a blue label. What really blows my mind is that there are just 172 blue label 9.8 copies of this comic on the census. That is just 1.2% of blue labels. Number 9, Incredible Hulk issue number 181, the first full appearance of Wolverine. This book has numbers that are very similar to Amazing Spider-Man 129. There are almost 17,000 total copies of this comic on the census, with 13,510 of them landing a blue label. That's just 1.1 or 142 9.8 blue labels out there. Number 8, Venom Lethal Protector issue number 1 might be at the other end of the spectrum. There are more than 20,000 copies of this comic on the census, with 16,000 of them being a blue label. Currently, there are 8,825 9.8s on the census, representing 54.2% of the population. Number 7 is Giant Size X-Men issue number 1, the first appearance of Colossus, Storm, Nightcrawler, Thunderbird, and also the second appearance of Wolverine. There are roughly 13,000 total copies of this book on the census, with 11,527 of them landing a blue label, and just 225 or 2% of those being a 9.8 blue label. Number 6, Amazing Spider-Man issue number 361 with its awesome cover from Mark Bagley. There are nearly 30,000 copies of this book graded by CGC across all labels. 25,529 of them are a blue label, with 22.3% or 5,696 of them being a blue label. Number 5, New Mutants issue number 98, the first appearance of Deadpool. There are nearly 27,000 copies of this book on the CGC census, with 23,000 of them being a blue label. 17.8% or 4,116 copies of this comic are a blue label 9.8. Number 4 on the most favorited list on the Shortboxed app is Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars issue number 8. This book is the origin of the symbiote that eventually becomes Venom. At present, there are just over 27,000 copies of this comic on the census, with 23,000 of them being a blue label. 5,152, or 22.5% of those copies, are a blue label 9.8. Number 3 on the list is Spawn, issue number 1, the first appearance of Spawn, aka Al Simmons. There are a staggering 31,000 copies of this comic graded by CGC on the census, with 23,000 of them being a blue label. An even more staggering 10,701 copies of this comic are a 9.8. For those keeping score, that is 46.8% of the blue label copies are a 9.8. Number 2 is Ultimate Fallout issue number 4, the first appearance of Miles Morales. At present, CGC has graded nearly 17,000 copies of this comic, with 15,220 of them being a blue label. Of those blue label copies, 26.1%, or nearly 4,000 copies of this comic, are a 9.8. And the number 1 book on the list is Amazing Spider-Man, issue number 300, the first full appearance of Venom, aka Eddie Brock. CGC has graded a whopping 34,000 copies of this comic, with 27,000 of them being a blue label. But get this, there are only 1,430 copies of this comic at a blue label 9.8. That is just 5.3% of the blue label population. So hopefully you all were able to keep score as I was going through those numbers. And I know that there are a lot of them, but I want to summarize here based upon the percentages that happen to be a 9.8. I grouped the books into 3 buckets: low, medium, and high. In the low bucket, I have 4 books. This includes Amazing Spider-Man issue number 129, with 1.2% of those books being a blue 9.8. Hulk 181, 1.1%. Giant Size X-Men, 2%. And Amazing Spider-Man 300, 5.3%. That's the low group. In the medium group, I also have 4 books. I have Amazing Spider-Man 361 at 22.3%, New Mutants 98 at 17.8%, Ultimate Fallout 4 at 26.1%, and Secret Wars issue number 8 at 22.5%. In the high group, I have just 2 books, Venom Lethal Protector at 54.2%, and Spawn issue number 1 at 46.8%. So that is how I grouped it. And again, I am interested to hear what your thoughts are. Do you agree with the grouping? Do you think that the percents that are 9.8s might have some impact on the long-term value and maybe desirability of these books? If you have some other epiphanies, don't be shy about leaving those behind as well. I tend to learn a lot from people's comments, and there are no wrong answers. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care. If you're feeling frisky, head over to swoldierpublishing.com to support our Kickstarter for Isolation Issue 4. Multiple packages are available.
This thing on? Mic check. I just want to make sure y'all can hear me clearly. Yo, should you practice art? Or should art be your practice? I had a question, so I asked it. Not to anyone specifically, but to my inner God, you know? The one that's gonna be a master. The one that's more than a rapper. The one that's an educator. The one that seeks enlightenment. He travels with concepts. He's got the mindset expansive. He understands that his time combined with travel and concepts makes his mind convex. Sort of like when you look at a brain scan. Straight off meditation, we was concaving until we had that eternal dialogue that created our dialect. Now we in distinct rooms with pure souls having them conversations. Synergy and combinations. You fly and we waiting. Indian style and the gold.